Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the RestoreLiberty.us podcast. My name is George Brunemann. Our special guest today is Todd Zinser, expert on all things Cincinnati. So we're going to be talking today about what's going on in the city. We've all seen the videos. So we're going to get into some of the issues you may or may not heard of and some of the background. And then later in the meeting, we're at the farm here in Delhi. Everybody's eating their chicken, so everything's going good. So we're going to discuss some of the big issues. And then sort of later on, we'll have candidates speaking. George Brumann's here. Some of the city council candidates are here. So I'm glad that you can make it. And if you're just listening online, we're hoping to have some great information about what's happening in the city with you. So, Todd, welcome.
Thank you.
So a little bit of background. You're a D.C. guy, right?
I was in D.C. for many years, yes.
Inspector General?
I was the Inspector General for the Department of Commerce, and that includes the Census Bureau, the Patent and Trademark Office, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration.
Wow.
And probably 6 or 7 more agencies.
And now you're living the dream here in the western side of Cincinnati,
Absolutely,
right?
back home.
Well, welcome back. Glad to have you. Tell a little bit about your own podcast. You have a podcast where you get into some of these issues.
I do. Thanks to Joe Strecker, I started a podcast back in February, and it's called Citizen Watchdog with Todd Zinser, and you can see it on YouTube. And then just earlier this summer, probably earlier this month, I started a website, and that's called CincinnatiWatchdog.com. because Citizen Watchdog was too expensive.
Right. Somebody already was ransoming that one
Yes.
off.
And that has my podcast, the op-eds that I've submitted to the Inquirer, my appearances on Brian Thomas's radio show, letters that I've written to the city council. Most of them do not have responses from the city council or the mayor.
Color me shocked.
And then the last thing, I really wanted the website to establish a research library where some of these documents that the city council puts out, or their business in the city council meetings, I wanted some place to put those documents for my own research as well as for the public's research. So we have a research library on the website also.
So not sexy stuff, but definitely informative and worth the time to look at.
Yeah, I really think that the city needs some oversight, not just citizen oversight. They need some kind of oversight agency within the city or the city and the county, but somebody needs to start looking at some of these programs from an objective oversight, good government perspective.
We need to get people that know their jobs in there.
Oh, definitely.
And that's a lot of what's going on. So let's go to the obvious first. Last month we were all treated to a video that just highlighted essentially how unsafe the city has become. It was, of course, during the Jazz Festival, which I just remember back in the 70s when my wife worked down at the Riverfront Stadium. That was always a problem. There was always nonsense going on during the cool Jazz Festival back then. But none of it was caught in real time on video with people cheering them on. So it really put in the center what's happening in the city from a public safety perspective. So what is, in your mind, the big things that people should be looking at as to how we got there and how do we get out?
Well, back in January in West and East Price Hill, we had a spate of 6 or 7 shootings. And as a result of that, I did write a letter to the mayor and the city council, basically on 3 things. One was nobody was coming out from the city council or the mayor's office, the city manager, to talk about what was happening in West and East Price Hill in terms of gun violence. It was silence. And that's the first thing I raised. And then secondly, I raised the issue of our crime data. Nobody believes it.
Right.
And so my request was that they commission an audit of how we collect the data and how we report the data, and crickets. And
so it's still no response to how they're getting their data, because they're all saying crime's way down. Right. Don't believe your eyes, but crime's way down.
Right, and that's what I said. It's like, that's not our life experience or living experience here. You don't have 7 shootings over New Year's Eve and it's business as usual.
Well, that's the problem. It has become business as usual.
So I saw an article in the Columbus Dispatch or some Columbus publication where when they got a new police chief, the first thing she did was audit her crime data.
Really?
And now you have a situation going on in Washington, D.C., where they have evidence that the police are underreporting violent crime.
Wow.
Systematically. And that's what can go on. You know, the issue in Columbus was that they gapped an entire category of crimes that were not being reported to the state, and they only relied on the state data. So they were missing tens of thousands of crimes being reported in Columbus. So that was an innocent system issue.
Right.
And then in D.C., it's deliberate falsification of the data. So that's a wide range of problems, and the city should be looking into how they collect and report their data. And then the third thing that I raised was the elimination of District 5.
Right, I remember that. They got rid of an entire district and basically redistributed everything else.
Yeah. Cincinnati has had, or did have, 5 police districts for 150 years. So in a matter of months, they decide that they're going to wipe that out. And my letter asked for an evaluation of that. Did the consolidation accomplish what they wanted to accomplish? Nothing. And so when the current spate of violence occurred, I wanted to revisit that.
Right.
It didn't make any sense to me that you could reduce police districts and yet provide the same response time and the same general coverage. So I put a request in, and what I got back was a 13-page PowerPoint with 2023 data in it, and it was dated 4 days after I submitted my request, which told me that they never issued that publicly. They probably never even sent it to the city council. And
so they had it. It was based on old data, and they just gave you whatever they could find in their file cabinet.
Yeah. So they really haven't done an evaluation, and even response times isn't the be all and end all of evaluating. That's right. So based on the elimination of District 5, I started to look at what else the city has done with respect to public safety. My conclusion is that they have disinvested in public safety. District 5 was supposed to get $17 million to build a new headquarters, and they actually issued bonds, $7 million in bonds, to help finance it. And that was in 2017, 2018. In 2019, you had the Columbia Parkway hillslide, and they took all the money for District 5
and put it into hillside?
And put it into the Columbia Parkway problem, and they never replenished it. And so
they were able to take something from a safety budget and move it over to a
yes, they took it out. There was a capital account for District 5,
and
they just moved it. And that was done by the council before this one. And but the consolidation occurred under this mayor and under this city council, and they've never even bothered to evaluate whether they did the right thing or not. And
so they're putting an emphasis on something other than policing the streets with officers. In what you sent me as comments, they've got a couple of citizen organizations they've started to fund that do something. What is ARC, A-R-C?
Right. They started 2 programs. One was started back in 2022, 2023, called the Alternative Response to Crisis. And what it is intended to do is supplement the police. This is their narrative. It's supposed to supplement the police with counselors and social workers.
So send a couple social workers instead of a couple police officers.
Right. And that concerns me because, throughout my career, the departments I worked in had other law enforcement components. And the idea of putting a non-law enforcement group into the same environment as law enforcement is not an easy thing. And it's probably not a wise thing.
I was just going to say, it's probably not a smart thing either.
Right.
They're not even trained for the situation.
The FOP filed an unfair labor practice because they had not been consulted about it. And they actually had a ruling in their favor. Now, they're supposed to be negotiating with the city, so I don't know what that status is. But ARC, the Alternative Response to Crisis, when you look at it, it's a classic defund the police effort.
So put it into social services as opposed to public safety, essentially.
Yes, and one of the things that if this were to be grown and developed, it would reduce the number of interactions between the public and the police. The folks behind defund the police want to limit contact between the police and the public.
Because they don't want them to know that they're actually nice people.
Right. And by doing that, by eliminating that contact, it's actually totally contrary to the collaborative agreement that the city had back in the early 2000s that they've tried to continue. That whole program is about the police and the community collaborating together. And this idea of putting these therapists and social workers in between the public and the police, I just don't think that's a good idea. I don't think it's consistent with the collaborative.
And it doesn't seem to be working?
Well,
I say that as a question, but I think it's obvious. It's not working.
Well, since the summer started, where we had Patrick Herringer's murder and we had the beatdown and all the other shootings, they don't really talk about these 311 responders or community responders. When I did write an op-ed about it, and one of my concerns is that there's a gap between what the city budgets for police officers. They budget for 1,059 police officers, and they have somewhere around 900. So they have a 150-person deficit. But the funds for those police officers are in there somewhere.
Being spent?
Well, that's a good question. If you try to go on the city's website and find out how many police officers are on board right now, or July 1, or pick a date, you can't find that number anywhere. The city does not publish it. And what that lets them do is take that money that they budgeted for police officers and spend it on other things. Hopefully they're spending it on public safety, but you never know.
Or murals in front of City Hall for Black Lives Matter or something.
Right. So one thing's for sure. If Mayor Purval's first, second, and third priority, as he says, is public safety, he's not doing a very good job. And
you talk about not trusting police data. I don't trust the mayor. I can't say his name correctly. It always comes out as something else. But so we've got the problem that they're not reporting it. We got the problem that they're taking their budget and moving it to other places. The defund the police has also taken another change, I think. There's a new group you also talked about that's ACT. What is ACT?
Right. In January of this year, they published what they call their blueprint, their anti-violence blueprint. And they set up 3 separate funds. One's called Boots on the Ground. One's called Safe and Clean. And the other is a $1.5 million transfer to United Way.
Oh, well, that'll help public safety.
To use for anti-gun violence.
So let's think about this. The first one was Boots on the Ground. So they're down 150 officers, so that's not working. The second one was what?
Safe and Clean.
Safe and Clean. Okay. Well, I think we got video proof of that one, too.
Yeah. So they call it a holistic approach.
Of course they do.
To public safety. And the problem is when you see what they're spending money on, there's 50 or more different nonprofit organizations that they give this money to carry out certain community activities. And I think the thinking is that by engaging the community in that way, they'll somehow reduce violence. And that's just not what people think about when they think about public safety.
So if you hand out some lollipops, crime will go down.
Well, one of their programs, for example, is to hand out snacks at
Really?
Government Square.
I was joking.
When the kids, get off the bus from school and they congregate at Government Square, there's been some problems down there with, kids.
So give them some chips and Doritos, and everybody will be fine.
I think they give them some fruit too.
I don't know if I want to cry or continue laughing. This is ridiculous. So in summary, when we look at public safety, we know we got a problem. We know that they give it lip service, especially now. I think the vote yesterday or the day before from the FOP sort of tells that the police force doesn't believe them.
That's right.
It was unanimous, no confidence in the mayor, and then supporting Corey, who's going to be speaking later. But
that's very serious.
It's crazy that we had the entire nation and the world staring at city of Cincinnati. Everybody was talking about it. I commend Bernie Moreno for going everywhere and talking about it. I hope he follows through on let's make change down here. Clearly, November is a chance for us to do that as citizens, but who knows? We got to be successful then. If we're not, we need some outside help to come in. So that's the public safety angle. Let's change a little bit. We know how great the Democrats are at saving money. So what kind of fiscal health is going on in the city right now?
Well, the city has plenty of money.
Really?
The city takes in about $2 billion a year. And they spend $1 billion on capital projects.
Describe a capital project. It's not fixing the Western Hills Viaduct. So
well, no, that's a county project.
Okay,
but capital could be building a new police headquarters, fixing up the park and rec centers, and whatever's not kind of operational.
So let me. I'm a math guy, right? So how many people are in the city of Cincinnati? 1 million.
In the city, 300,000.
So 300,000. We're spending $1 billion on capital.
Yes.
So that's $3,000 per person.
Well, if you're the math guy,
I'll check it after the podcast is recorded. But I think that's $3,000 a person. For $3,000 a person, we could basically buy everybody a new car.
Yeah. So then they have their operating account or their operating fund, and that's broken into restricted funds and general funds. So most of the spending that you have some flexibility with is in your general fund. And that's where they fund all the police, the fire, the health services, et cetera, comes out of the general fund. So that's the one I really focus on, plus the capital account.
Okay, so how are we looking as far as, I know one of the popular things is always unfunded mandates, like Social Security at the federal level. What's the unfunded stuff that's going on at the city level?
Yeah, well, for the longest time, I identified 3 deficits in the city. One has been called by the Futures Commission as the number one threat, and their report uses the word threat to the city, was our pension liability. This is the pension for the rank and file city employees, not the police and fire, but your public service employees. And yes, it's not OPERS.
Oh, really?
That's
they have
the
their
problem.
Own?
Cincinnati, I think, has the only public employee health or pension plan in the state, and
it's doing fantastic, right?
It's under a court order to get fully funded by 2045, I believe. And right now, they're not going to make it.
That's 20 years from now.
They're about $842 million underfunded. They've got to raise $842 million to put it into the pension system before 2045 to comply with the court order.
So they've been paying into it, obviously. They just haven't been paying enough, or they expect 20% returns every year, and of course that never happens.
Right. There's a separate board that handles the pension system, and they've made recommendations to the city, which basically is just give us 2% more every year, and then the next year 2% on top of that, and then 2% on top of that. And the board is concluding that they will they will meet the requirement. The city has not adopted that.
And each year they don't adopt it, they're even more in debt then.
Yes, I think they stepped up their contributions. For example, last year, the city had a $65 million surplus, basically, that they needed to spend. And they're $842 million behind on their pension liability. They decided to put $4 million of that $65 million towards the pension. And then the rest of it went to, various
giving tips to the kids that get off school.
Yeah.
So the other thing you mentioned was problems with deferred maintenance and fleets.
Right. The second deficit is the notorious deferred maintenance that we sold the railroad for. And so, one of my problems with it is that I don't think the city has the capacity or the ability to spend all this extra money. They don't have the staff. They don't have the equipment. They
don't have the IQ.
They probably don't have the contracting capabilities or a sufficient contracting capabilities to get all that extra work done. And we've already had to push back against 2 attempts to tap into that railroad money
for something else,
for something other than that it's supposed to be $400 million in deferred maintenance.
So Corey likes to talk about all the potholes on the west side of town. Is the deferred maintenance fixing the streets?
Well, the way the sale was structured, they actually did not start getting any of that $1.6 billion until this fiscal year. And so, yes, the proceeds from the railroad should be going into road repairs, etc. One of the issues with how the city is handling this is they've come up with this plan based on equity. And so rather than, for example, tackle the most important things first.
Instead of doing like what every company does is prioritize based on need, they're going to do it based on which neighborhood.
I would prioritize any safety issues, any crumbling bridges, any unsafe roads, etc. But the Cincy on track is what it's called. That was first and foremost designed to be equitable.
Okay.
And so we got a $400 million deficit. They don't think we could cut through that deficit in 10 years. So and then the third one is our fleet maintenance.
So what is fleet? Is that cop cars or is that the cherry pickers or whatever?
That's all the vehicles that the city owns and operates as part of our fleet. There's 1,500 vehicles. And I'm not sure that includes some of the smaller things like golf carts or whatever.
Scooters.
But the internal audit manager for the city, who you never hear from, actually did an audit of the fleet maintenance and replacement in January of 24.
So recent,
and found that almost half of the fleet is what they call out of life cycle. That means they need to be replaced.
Wow.
And that deficit's about $80 million. If you add up the pension, you add up the deferred maintenance, you add up the fleet, you're about $1.3 billion.
Holy cow.
So then the fourth deficit was hitting us right in the face. The fourth deficit is our police officers.
Not having enough of them.
So
the easy answer there is we don't have enough because why would you want to be a Cincinnati cop? If you do anything, they're not going to back you right now.
Well, that's the way it seems. The mayor made this comment on curfews, for example. That was one of their solutions. He made a statement that they didn't want to arrest youth and give them a criminal record that they'd be saddled with the rest of their life. And I'm not sure, but I always thought that for the most part, I know it's not 100%, but for the most part, your juvenile record gets sealed.
Or expunged usually.
Yeah, and then after a particular period of time, it gets expunged. So I'm not sure what the mayor was talking about, but that's why the juvenile justice system was set up, is so that the youth would not be saddled with a record for the rest of their lives. So, he has a lot of issues with public safety. He is not pro public safety, no matter what he says. I found
he also doesn't know how to balance a checkbook.
Well,
right? I mean, you're talking about a $1.5 billion out of a $2 billion per year budget. So they're 75% in the hole starting off.
Yeah. Well, my concern is that those deficits were created by previous councils, but the way that they manage their money, they're contributing to those deficits instead of dealing with them.
Right.
And it's just going to keep going on and on. And for example, on the pension, if they can't step up their pension contributions, eventually that pension is going to eat itself, because the number of people paying into the pension is being reduced every day, and the amount of money that you have to pay out is going up every day. So their inability or their failure to deal with that pension liability is a big, big issue.
And it's just going to get bigger.
Yeah.
So we're running out of time, but real quick, what was your, you made a comment about transparency. You actually started off with talking about the need for audits. What's going on from a transparency perspective downtown right now?
Well, I think one of the reasons it's so important to get somebody besides the incumbents on city council, I call this city council all for one and one for all. There's no
division, no separate thoughts.
Very few divisions. And so you really don't know what's going on behind the curtain. That's number one. And when you try to find out what's going on behind the curtain through public records requests and things like that, the city solicitor's office is nothing but a block and tackle operation where...
To get in your way.
Yeah. They write back, oh, your request is overbroad, or your request is improper for this reason or that reason. I put a request in for records concerning Iris Rowley, for example, 2 weeks ago, actually almost 3 weeks ago, and they finally wrote back and said my request was overbroad. So I have to clarify it. And so
I went page 15 and document for 37.
Yeah, it's one of these kind of a catch-22. They want you to specify the documents you're looking for, but you don't really know what documents they have.
So they don't give you the information you need to make an informed decision. But right. I'm going to cue in on the thing you said at the beginning there, which is there's no diversity of thought downtown at all. They're all extreme liberals. They're all behind the defund the police. They're all behind... I suspect none of them have ever had a real job where they had to balance a checkbook. Most of them probably have worked for government their entire lives once they get started.
I think there's 3 people on the council, including the mayor, who were with P&G. I think AFTAB was a lawyer for P&G, and then Mark Jeffries was with P&G, and Anna Albee was with P&G.
Did they get fired or leave? Never mind. Don't answer.
I don't know the answer to that.
Well, Todd, thank you so much. I hope that was some information that was worth hearing. You can see everything that we were talking about. We will put it up online at restoreliberty.us. Our podcasts are up there. Please share on X, share on Facebook. We need to get the word out. Todd, I'll put your website and your podcast up there as well.
Thank you.
Super informative stuff. You've been an Inspector General for the city of Cincinnati now. I just want to make sure you know we really appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I tell people it's your tax dollars at work because I'm getting a pension from the government.
Well, hey, thank you very much, and we'll be back soon with more information from restoreliberty.us.